Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. We are back, and we're back in a big way because finally we got an NFL free agency episode. The tampering period started 2 or 3 weeks ago, but you gotta wait for things to kind of simmer down, to cool off, to take its course, and for everybody to kind of process these signings and be able to evaluate. Was it a good move? Was it a bad move? Was it too much money? Was it not enough? Were there other teams that could have used the services? So forth and so forth. But we're finally here to talk about it. It's your boy, the OC, also known as the guy with the Boston backwards hat. And back to my left, or actually on here it's my left, but it's the screen's right.
Right.
Mr. Tyler O'Donohue, what is going on?
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks for having me back. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So, if you didn't watch the free agency episode last year, we pulled up the tracker website and we pretty much just went through all the teams, and we pretty much decided, did this team have a good free agency? Was it good that they gave this player an extension and they made this trade, or did they make the right choice signing him instead of going along with him? But Tyler's got the website on his computer. We can pull that up real quickly. Normally I would do it on mine, but considering that I'm doing it from an iPad and StreamYard doesn't like it when you want to share your screen from an iPad, then that's the price that we're going to get. So here we are. We got the tracker website, and I honestly think we should just start with the Buffalo Bills, considering that it's the top team on the chart. Let's start with the first one. Josh Allen agreeing to terms on a new 6-year deal worth $330 million with $250 million guaranteed. I don't know if this makes him the highest paid quarterback. I don't know if this puts him over the top of Dak, but safe to assume that I think that, the Bills made the right decision. He is their face of the franchise. And, honestly, if there's anybody that's going to be the highest paid player at quarterback, there's Patrick Mahomes, but Josh Allen is way more deserving of it than Prescott. And that's not to say that Dak sucks, but it's just Josh Allen, there are levels to this. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's Josh Allen. He definitely deserves it. I hope him putting some money in his pockets can get him over the hump into the Super Bowl next season. So I don't know. I mean, obviously he's definitely deserving of the money. Just whether or not he gets it done next season.
Yep. And they re-signed a few key guys. Ty Johnson, awesome receiving back. Reggie Gilliam, their fullback. Greg Rousseau getting a $20 million per year extension for 4 seasons with $5.4 million or 54. I'm sorry, $54 million guaranteed. I was gonna say, dear God, that is kind of a bargain. But there are a few key signings that I thought. Oh, Khalil Shakir, that's another guy. 4 years, $60.2 million. At first, I was like, whoa, what the heck? But I've loved him, since he was a rookie. I watched him in a preseason game against the Denver Broncos, and I thought, damn, they better get him the ball more often because that guy can move, and he might not have he might not be one of the biggest receivers on the field, but this guy's got some girth, and he's got unbelievable strength. And they re-signed Damar Hamlin, their long snapper, Dane Jackson, but there were a few key new moves that I thought were really interesting. Terrell Bernard, that's another guy I forgot. Terrell Bernard, obviously their best key middle linebacker, a $50 million year for 4 years. When you plug him with Matt Milano, when they're on the field together, havoc can happen. But like I said, you got Joey Bosa signing a 1-year deal when everybody thought he was going to the 49ers to reunite with Nick, which I think, we have a lot of friends that go to Ohio or that went to or that are fans of Ohio State or went to Ohio State, whatever the case may be. So it definitely was a bummer that we didn't get to see that happen. Larry Ogunjobi signing a 1-year deal. Same thing with Michael Hoyt, 3-year deal actually, worth $24 million. And then Kendrick Green was kind of an interesting one. A 1-year deal. I feel like it's going to be more of a depth piece than anything. But what did you think of the Bosa, Hoyt, and Ogunjobi signings, or at least one of them in particular?
I love all of them. I think especially Joey Bosa. I think they kind of got a little bit of a steal with him.
Yes.
I've been a Joey Bosa fan for a while, but yeah, I agree with you. I thought for sure he'd want to play with his brother for a little bit, but I don't know, maybe he didn't want to be in his shadow in San Fran. So I like the moves. I think the Bills they definitely signed a bunch of guys that can definitely be assets to their team. With losing Diggs, I think they needed to sign a couple more key players, on offense and defense to kind of counteract that. But overall, I mean, I think they did a great job.
Yeah. With Bosa, I mean, I'm not surprised that it's a 1-year deal because ever since he got that extension from the Chargers, he has just not been able to stay healthy. And that's why I wasn't surprised that the Chargers cut him because, yeah, he might have been, an outstanding pass rusher in his prime, when he was taken 3rd overall in the 2016 NFL draft. But, after, notching a few double-digit sacks, he's just never been able to reach that potential again. And it sucks because I love Joey Bosa, out of Ohio State. I loved him when he was with the Chargers. And, I've always been a Bosa fan, both of them. But hopefully he regains, some semblance of what he was. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be a double-digit sack guy ever again. But now that Buffalo cut Von Miller, I feel like Buffalo's just going to prioritize more of its younger pass rushers. Obviously, you brought in Rousseau, or you kept Rousseau. You still have Ed Oliver. You've got AJ Epinesa, who's really, really upped his game to the nth degree. And, the big key is the secondary, to me, when it comes to that defense. They cut Rasul Douglas. Teron Johnson, he's really more of a nickel back. I don't really think Dane Jackson really solves anything. And Christian Benford, I really like him, but I don't think he's a number 1 corner. I don't really think he's there yet. So we'll see what happens. But another thing, you scroll up real quick, Josh Palmer, signing a $36 million deal for 3 years. Another former Charger coming to Buffalo. I actually think I'm curious to see how they're going to utilize him. Given that he's a 3-year deal, I'm pretty sure they're going to give him a lot of starting minutes, especially in the slot, because I think that's where he gets his best production. Amari Cooper's still a free agent. Who knows if you bring him back? I mean, you traded for him at the deadline, and he, showed some flashes, but never really kind of had that, difference maker factor that you saw him when he was, got traded to Dallas, or when he started with the Raiders, or even when he was in Cleveland, with Jacoby Brissett. So I like it. I feel like it's a little too steep considering that it's 3 years, but I mean, listen, if Marquez Valdes-Scantling could thrive with the Chiefs, why wouldn't Josh Palmer be able to do well in Buffalo? So when it comes to a letter grade with how the Bills have approached free agency so far, what would you give it?
I'd probably give it a solid B+. They've signed some guys that can definitely make some key contributions to their team next season. They've also signed some guys, that it's kind of a toss-up and it's a little bit of a gamble. Like you've been saying with Joey Bosa and how he's been trying to stay healthy, and Palmer with how he played last year for LA. So I mean, they've taken some gambles and they've taken some more safer routes with re-signing guys and giving them bigger contracts. So I think a B+ is a solid rating for the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. I mean, listen, you gave your quarterback a huge deal. You brought back a lot of key guys to your core and your nucleus to success. And along the way, you signed, a few key free agents that could help you out in the long run. But the big key difference is you got to beat Kansas City in the playoffs. The minute you do that, there's no question that this team could win a championship. Without question. As long as you got Josh Allen fully healthy, anything can happen. You beat that team, you're golden. So let's scroll down to the next team on our list. We got the Miami Dolphins, who definitely had an active offseason. Let's start with the first one here. Zach Wilson, going to be Tua's backup. Who could have ever thought, right? Back in the AFC East.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that for the first time, I just kind of started laughing. It's kind of funny that it's like a desperate pickup just in case Tua decides he wants to destroy his brain again. But I don't know. Just a funny. I don't know. I was surprised. I don't really know if you want him as your backup, but I mean, whatever. I guess better safe than sorry. Have somebody with a little bit of starting experience. So I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't like it at the same time.
I mean, I guess it's kind of better than Tyler Huntley, Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley, but Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's much ado about nothing. I mean, my dad's a Dolphins fan, so when I told him that, he's just like, "Oh, good." So he's just there in case Tua gets hurt again. So basically, he voiced everything that you just said.
Yep.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it's just, it's more of an insurance pickup than anything. Alexander Madison, he's going to be Devon Achane's backup because Miami released Raheem Mostert. We'll get into that in just a second. Dwayne Eskridge, I liked him coming out of college, but, never really had that potential or never really reached his potential. This one I didn't really realize until like a couple weeks ago. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine signing a 2-year deal. I don't know if you know too much about him, but I watched him a lot with the Titans. This guy can play anywhere. I think he's not only awesome in the slot, he can get open on routes. He's a 50-50 goal ball getter. Not a dominant one, but, he can do that. That's part of his arsenal.
Yep.
And, I feel like he could definitely be a pretty big security blanket in case, Miami decides to double Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill or maybe take out Jonnu Smith as the security blanket. So I personally like that. But I would say money-wise, one of the biggest deals was signing James Daniels to a 3-year deal worth $24 million. What did you think of that? Because Miami definitely needed some offensive line help, without a doubt.
No, I mean they definitely did. With how Tua was getting banged up last season, I mean it was pretty obvious. I thought for sure that they would go ahead and sign somebody good, and they ended up doing that. So I think that's a great move. $24 million, it's a hunk of change for an offensive lineman, but or guard, but no, I think that's a good move. James Daniels, big dude. I like him. So hopefully he can protect Tua and keep him from slamming his head in the turf.
I know. I mean, that is one of the biggest factors for Miami having success. Can Tua stay healthy? Because nobody wants to see him get another concussion or have another serious injury like he did at Alabama or at Miami. Whether it was the hip injury, whether it was having tie rope surgery because of that. The amount of concussions that he suffered over the past 2 or 3 years. So that's a huge factor. But defensively, they re-signed Tyrel Dodson, who I honestly think was one of the more underrated pieces on defense because, he went from a fringe role player to an instant starter. Maybe not the level of impact that Zach Bond had on the Philadelphia Eagles, coming over from the New Orleans Saints, but pretty close to that, if the team had a better record. Willie Gay signing a deal with the Miami Dolphins as well, coming over from New Orleans. Obviously, spent the first few years of his career with the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's definitely good depth there. I think you put two of them together, that's a pretty decent linebacking core, especially for a Dolphins defense that did pretty well, even with the amount of, slippery slopes they've had along the way. Other than that, I feel like a lot of it is just depth pieces for the most part. They got the talent. Farrell Brown, was with the Patriots a couple of years ago. Wasn't terrible. Can be good with run blocking. So, good backup for Jonnu Smith. Ifeatu Melifonwu signing a 1-year deal, coming over from Detroit. I've always liked his game. And, with the release of Kendall Fuller, who knows? Maybe he could actually have some, quality production in the system that, Anthony Weaver wants to run. Ryan Stonehouse signing with the Dolphins, their punter. I'm not exactly sure because I don't know if Jake Bailey is still on the roster or not. I've always liked Jake Bailey, but if Jake Bailey is cut from the team, I kind of forgot about that. But I'm just hoping that Ryan Stonehouse kind of revives his career and that he just proves that the Titans special teams is outright garbage. But yeah, for the most part, what would you give for a letter grade here?
I think I'd give them a B. I think they signed a couple decent guys that can definitely help them out. I like the Westbrook-Ikhine signing. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I love, like you said, the offensive line kind of deal they got going on there to back up Tua. But I wouldn't give them much higher than a B because you're right. They signed a lot of depth players, just to kind of secure that defensive end that you said they were struggling a little bit with last year. But I think a B is a good grade for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'd say so myself. B or B minus.
Yep.
they have the talent, but A, you got to beat quality opponents, and B, you got to make sure Tua's healthy.
Exactly.
So that's all it comes down to. And more importantly, it comes down to leadership and accountability. So there you go. Let's get on to the next team, the New England Patriots, who spent the most money by far in NFL free agency. And I'm definitely going to be biased here, but I would definitely give this an A-. And the reason why I give it an A- is because they didn't sign one position that I really wanted them to go after, which was a left tackle. But in hindsight, might have been the best decision, considering that the left tackle market was pretty weak and not exactly the strongest. But let's start with the biggest signing that just happened yesterday. Stefon Diggs signing a 3-year deal worth $69 million. I was actually literally getting gas on my way home from work. I just found out that Russell Wilson signed with the Giants. And then Twitter pops up and it says, it's from an Adam Schefter tweet. It says, Stefon Diggs is signing that type of contract with the New England Patriots. I'm like, wait, what? We actually signed a game-changing wide receiver? Where the hell has this been the whole time? It's definitely high risk, high reward, because that Stefon Diggs is an outstanding player. He's, when healthy, one of the best receivers in football, but it's also a risk because he's coming off a torn ACL and he's 30 years old. So you're just hoping that you don't run into a kind of a Brandon Ayuk situation where, he's not really the same player once again, but hopefully that is not the case. I like it. I think bringing Matt Collins over from Buffalo, that is great additional depth because you finally get to unlock the potential of Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, two of your rising receivers. Hopefully it allows Jalen Polk and Javon Baker to kind of, get their careers back on track now that they don't have to deal with that much exorbitant pressure and that they can, find their roles really nicely. But other than that, they were definitely active from the start. When Harold Landry got released from the Tennessee Titans, New England was the first to call him up, and unsurprisingly so, because there's the relationship with him and Mike Vrabel. Yep. I definitely think it's a great deal because he's one of the best pass rushers in football. $43.5 million for 3 years with $26 million fully guaranteed. He's still a young player. He's still, he's not like, who's the guy that I can think of right at the top of the bat? He's not TJ Watt. He's not Myles Garrett, but listen, he is definitely a guy that can make a difference on that line. And, you bring in Milton Williams, giving him a huge signing, pretty much fleecing him and, convincing him to back out of an agreement with the Carolina Panthers, the best defensive player, maybe in free agency, arguably. Yeah, I'm excited to see what this defensive line can do, especially if Christian Barmore can, return to full strength, because blood clots are not something to take lightly. Nope. Garrett, when it comes to the offensive line, they brought in Morgan Moses and they signed Garrett Bradbury. Moses I like because they definitely needed a right tackle, and you needed Michael Onwenu, to thrive in his natural position, which is right guard, even though I think he could play anywhere. Personally, I'm just biased. Garrett Bradbury, he's an average offensive lineman, and here's why. Run blocking, he's one of the best in the league. Pass protecting, he's like Evan Neal, which is something that you don't really want. So I'm hoping that he kind of, shuts that narrative down and, fits into the David Andrews role well, because our longtime captain, his shoulder was not healing up, and we just decided to release him, which is bittersweet because he was one of the last remaining pieces from that Super Bowl 53 championship winning team. And that was just a redundant phrase right there. But still in all, you're hoping that Garrett Bradbury can just, be a serviceable offensive lineman and, have, I wouldn't say like a peak starting production, but somewhere close to that. And then other than that, I love the Robert Spillane deal. I didn't even know he was a free agent when I first saw this. I'm like, Robert Spillane is a linebacker that you can do anything with. He could run plug. He can, play well in coverage. He's instinctive with his hands. He can blitz up the middle. He can literally do anything. The coverage skills are probably not the best trait, but I think it's still something that, he could do. better than the guys we had last year, if you ask me.
Yep.
And then Carlton Davis signing a 3-year deal. I've always liked Carlton Davis. Obviously, we both lived in the Sarasota area, so we got to watch a lot of Carlton Davis. I mean, when you pair him up with Christian Gonzalez, that is going to be a pretty dangerous duo, especially with Mike Vrabel running that defense. And then bringing a couple depth guys in Marcus Epps and Jalen Hawkins. This is definitely an A- because you're giving Drake May some help. You're reestablishing the identity of the defense, and you're bringing in tone setters that are going to change the culture of that locker room. I got to see the schedule, but I feel pretty good that my team can turn things around next year. I'm not saying they're going to win the division or win the Super Bowl. That's too big of a stretch because you got Josh Allen to deal with twice a year, and you're in the same conference as Mahomes, Lamar, and Burrow. But you got almost every single position. You just need to, fix a few more holes, especially at left tackle, because dear God, that is a freaking dumpster fire. But I might be biased, but I give it an A- without a doubt.
Yeah, no, I mean, I gotta agree. I'd almost give it an A. I mean, before I go any further, I'm just like, I cannot wait. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for all Patriots fans. I think you got a great young quarterback in Drake May. You have Ramondre Stevenson, who has had his problems, but I mean, he's been a solid running back for you guys sometimes, most of the time.
When he's holding on to the ball.
Yeah, when he can hold on to the ball. But, you locked up some more receivers, Diggs. Hopefully, if he has a great year off that ACL, he could, make Drake May even better. You have Mac now, and you have, a young Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, like you were talking about. So you have a lot of young guys, surrounding this young quarterback. Kind of reminds me a little bit of what the Commanders are doing. But and then you also went on defense. You got Milton Williams, who I think was a great signing. Who had a dominant game in the Super Bowl for the Eagles. And then, like you said, Carlton Davis. Had a decent year with the Lions last year, but he's still a relatively young guy who, can make an instant impact on the team. So, I mean, I love what you guys did, and I'm excited to see
I didn't even bring up the best part. Scroll up to the top a bit of the signings list. Josh Dobbs. We got the Pasternaut as our backup. So, at least we think he's our backup. I'm not sure because – Joe Milton, we might have 3 quarterbacks on our depth chart.
Yeah, Milton's good.
I'm kidding. Probably 2. But because Joe Milton is definitely a guy that can get a starting role with, well, not every team, but he's definitely a quality backup for any football team. I'll leave it at that. Started with I'm definitely exaggerating there, but we can move on. Let's go to the New Jersey Jets here. So their biggest move was not only releasing Aaron Rodgers, which is, just shows that the Jets are just still a laughingstock. They're taking an exorbitant amount of dead money, but they quickly found their replacement with Justin Fields, signing a 2-year deal worth $40 million, which is, I mean, compared to how much quarterbacks are making nowadays, this is literally nothing. It's a bargain deal, which is why I actually kind of like this signing. So, what would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, I think Justin Fields was definitely a little frustrated with his situation in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, I love him coming over to New York. It's been a while since they've had a mobile quarterback, good mobile quarterback, at least I should say. Right. So, I mean, I love the signing, and they got him for relatively cheap. I mean, $40 million is not cheap, but, it's not like they're signing a max deal with some guy for the next 10 years. So, I like it. It's a nice short-term deal. They didn't have to go crazy and spend their whole cap space on him, but I like it.
Yeah. Listen, I feel like it's more of a team-friendly deal than anything because it's like it's kind of like Russell Wilson with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's like if Justin Fields, sucks, then they can let him go after the next year, or they could, potentially sign somebody else in the next free agency class, or maybe wait till the draft and draft a future successor and just keep Justin Fields on as like a backup or, give him some time to develop, whatever the case may be. So I definitely think that it's a good deal. I mean, you got you definitely have you don't have the worst supporting cast around him. You got Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. I mean, they released Devontae Adams, and they might be moving on from Allen Lazard. I don't know what the case may be here, but I mean, the Jets, they are right back to where they were 4 years ago, which is starting over from scratch and just hoping to God that they, turn the corner. And, the cycle might repeat itself as long as Woody Johnson is still the owner. But other than that, I think, some of these signings don't immediately pop out. I mean, Kenny Nwanu, one of their best special teamers, signed to a 1-year deal. Josh Myers, bringing in a starting center. But I think, listen, Andre Sisco signing a 1-year deal. That's a pretty good safety. He's definitely a ball hawk. Coverage skills are not the best, but who knows? Maybe with Aaron Glenn, those will definitely get revived. Brandon Stevens,
that hurts.
I don't know. That's a little bit too steep of a contract because, listen, they let DJ Reed go in free agency. We knew that was going to be a big loss. He's now with the Detroit Lions. We'll get into that in just a second.
Yep.
I mean, Brandon Stevens isn't horrible. I don't know. I mean, when you pair him next to Sauce, who kind of had a down season last year, I'm just hoping that. I mean, I like Aaron Glenn, so I'm hoping that this turns out to work out in their favor. But I don't know. I feel like you're the Ravens fan. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it on the head there. Brandon Stevens, he had 70 total tackles last year in 17 games played. So nothing crazy, no picks, but he's not really a ball hawking kind of guy. He's kind of an open field tackler, pretty quick on his feet. He had 59 solo tackles, so just kind of all around the field making plays. Not really a ball hawk, but
yeah,
hurts a little bit that we let him go, but. Hopefully he can make an impact with New York.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yep.
But I think their biggest signing, I mean, at least I wouldn't say it's like their biggest free agent signing, but it's an extension. Re-signing Jamian Sherwood to a 3-year, $45 million deal. I mean, they cut CJ Mosley, and Jamian Sherwood really had a breakout season, and he got himself a deserving payday. So, because he's someone that can also do just about everything. Coverage, run plug, intercept passes, and blitz. I think the Jets definitely have themselves a quality defensive player for sure that they locked up for a few more years. So,
yep.
Yeah. What would you give this for a grade?
Because
this one's interesting.
I'd probably give them a B-, B- or a C, somewhere in between that range. They got a good decently young quarterback for the future. I like the Tyler Johnson trade a little bit. He's quick. He's really quick. And I watched him a little bit in LA last year.
Yeah.
And nice young quick receiver. So they got a couple young guys coming in.
He was with Tampa too, right?
Yeah, he was with Tampa his first 2 years, I think, or maybe 3 years. But
right.
And they got a couple like Brandon Stevens. It hurts me as a Ravens fan that we let him go, but I think he can make a decent impact along with Sauce back there. So yeah, I mean, I think a B- is a solid grade. Nothing crazy that pops off the sheet to me, but a couple young guys that could make an impact for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's scroll back down to the bottom and let's talk about one of your favorite teams, the Baltimore Ravens. I'll give you the floor here because I mean, not too many signings, but definitely some names that catch a lot of interest.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Rush, whatever. Pretty much banking on Lamar to take us to the promised land. DeAndre Hopkins, that was interesting. A 1-year, $5 million. So they're obviously not that confident to see if he can stay healthy or not. But I mean, you never know. He's kind of an off and on player. My boy Tylan Wallace, love him, even though he doesn't really do a crazy amount. I think he had like one good catch all year last year. But
well, he's a special teamer, right?
I think he does a little bit of both. Yeah, I think you're right. He does. That's why I was saying that. But mostly special teams. Ricard, who I feel like has been on the team for decades, but I think they're just kind of keeping him on the team just to have him there. He's just a big dude.
Yep.
Couple offensive line, our boy Ronnie Stanley. I like that. They gave him a pretty hefty chunk of change, but he's been pretty reliable on that offensive end. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, we have a good enough team. We have a good enough team, but I mean, we just got to put it all together.
Yep, it's just postseason ineptitude. That's just the Achilles heel. Yeah, I agree with most of everything you said. I mean, you got your backup, your backup quarterback, DeAndre Hopkins. You know, not the same receiver that he was. I mean, he was pretty good at Kansas City, but I mean, I don't know how much of that had to do with Patrick Mahomes or if it was just, you know, I mean, Hopkins still has something left in the tank. I'm not saying he's like a bum or a scrub anymore, but he's just like, I don't know. Like I said, you're not getting prime Houston anymore. Nope. Like that's just the reality. Ronnie Stanley, that is definitely a huge win for you guys because he was getting a lot of offers from a lot of places. The Patriots were one of them, and it was somebody that we definitely could have used. And I think he even turned down more money from some organizations to stay with Baltimore, to take a team-friendly, or at least we think it's a team-friendly deal. $20 million for 3 years, like that's a pretty big contract for a tackle.
Yeah.
But that is a huge win, keeping your blindside blocker around. And then, I mean, Chidobe Awuzie is your Brandon Stevens replacement right there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not terrible. He's not great. He's just average. So, but I think you still have a lot of your key guys with your nucleus around. I think that's really all that matters. As long as you just don't choke in the playoffs again, you're going to be a playoff contender. You're still going to have Lamar and MVP conversations. Derrick Henry is still going to be running over people left and right. And your defense, God, I mean, if we can only pray that your defense will be the best in football for 4 straight months instead of turning it on at the start of November. So, all right. What would you grade this? What would you grade it?
I think another B- is good. I think just the only one that really stands out to me that I was excited about was Ronnie Stanley. You know,
that's fair.
We're kind of gambling with Hopkins. And all the other guys, I feel like we're going to come back anyways. So, I mean, I think a B- is good or a C+.
Yeah, I'd say so. I agree with that. All right, Cincinnati.
Crazy.
Here we go. Right. So, obviously, they were the biggest talk of the whole offseason for obvious reasons. What do you do with Ja'Marr Chase? What do you do with T. Higgins? What do you do with Trey Hendrickson?
Yep.
Well, they took care of the first 2 players. Ja'Marr Chase is the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. 4 years, $161 million, which, by the way, Dallas, good luck having to pay Micah Parsons close to that. And then T. Higgins being the highest paid number 2 wide receiver in football. 4 years, $115 million. Apparently, this is like a very team-friendly deal when you look at his contract, because apparently, I don't know if I'm like completely accurate with this, but apparently they don't take on like dead money after 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is. So obviously, it's a huge win on both sides for Cincinnati. And then, a lot of it was bringing a lot of guys back. Mike Gesicki, Tanner Hudson, Cody Ford, Joseph Osai, BJ Hill. So it was kind of what the Patriots were doing last year. The only difference is the Bengals with Joe Burrow, they're a playoff contender. Well, it's if they don't start off the season so slow every year. Yep. But they never really went after, anybody else, that was available besides Oren Burks and TJ Slaton and Lucas Patrick. I'm not sure. Samaje Perine, he spent a year with Kansas City and they brought him back. But what did you think with Chase and Higgins? Like, what were your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think right as the season ended, I think all of Bengals fans were kind of sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting for that ESPN notification to pop up.
Yep.
And I think for most of the fans, it took a lot longer than they thought. I mean, especially for me. I mean, I'm not as much of a fan as maybe some other people are, but I was surprised at how long it took them to get a deal done for both these guys. I thought it would be, a pretty immediate deal. But I mean, I know Bengals fans are happy to have those 2 guys back because without them, I mean, I don't think they're the same team at all. So that was big for them. Gesicki, I guess that's another good signing. He got a good hunk of change. He was okay, for them last year or the last couple of years. So, Yeah, I mean, and then like you said, just a bunch of re-signings. They didn't really go out. It's pretty obvious they used all their money and focus on the two, blue chip receivers. So I don't know. You want me to rate it too?
I'll give my thoughts quickly.
Yeah.
So I think everybody knew that Ja'Marr Chase was going to be back. And
Yeah.
that wasn't even a question because you can't let the Triple Crown, winner, just play out the rest of his rookie deal. I'm glad that they took care of it right away. T. Higgins, that was a different issue because we knew that they were going to put him on the franchise tag again because they weren't going to give up T. Higgins for nothing. But, I mean, I think it's great that they brought him back. Joe Burrow definitely needs those two just as much as they need him for that offense to thrive, to really, be at the top of their craft. But I also know that means Trey Hendrickson is most likely going to get traded. But I think what I like the most about what they did this offseason is that they didn't allow Chase or Higgins to hold out in training camp. Mm-hmm. I think that was something that kind of plagued them last year and was a big factor as to why they started the season so poorly. Just having to, sort through that chaos and trying to get back on the right track. But I love that they took care of it early before the draft and, in the midst of free agency so that they could, really focus on their bigger priorities, which is, trying to compete for a championship. But the reason why I wouldn't give this a high grade is because your defense is still going to suck unless you really go all in the draft.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they had the worst offseason because you were able to get Chase and Higgins back, but there was a lot more that they could have done that I think they just, didn't prioritize or capitalize on. But give me your grade. What would you think?
I would say a C or a C minus, just a bunch of re-signings, like you said, didn't really focus on defense. So you would assume that they're going for somebody in the draft, but I think a C or a C minus is pretty fair.
Yes.
Bengals.
Yeah, definitely. Again, not the biggest losers, but
right.
You're not putting them in the top 10. That's for damn sure.
Exactly.
All right. Speaking of which, oh dear God, the Cleveland Browns. Oh boy, this team just does not stop. I think we should just address the biggest elephant in the room. Myles Garrett, 4-year extension with $123 million, $40 million per year salary on average. It ties Garrett to the Browns for the next 6 years with a no trade clause. First of all, let's just start from the beginning as to why we're addressing it in that manner. So I want to say maybe a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago, however long it was, Myles Garrett released a statement on social media requesting a trade. And he made it clear that it wasn't about the money. It was about competing for a Super Bowl and having a chance to win and adding to that legacy and hoping to enshrine himself in a canon as one of the best to ever play, which he's going to. I don't even think that's even a discussion.
Yep.
And then this bombshell drops, and I'm just really left scratching my head. And it's not just because Myles Garrett is staying in Cleveland. I mean, obviously, it's great that Cleveland brought him back because he's pretty much the only reason why they're freaking relevant right now. The only good reason why they're relevant in that case. But it just leaves me confused because there's so it was about the money. It was probably your message of saying, hey, give me this amount of money or give me something close to that or I'm out of here and I'm going to go to a team that will utilize me and that will, give me what I want because I'm Myles freaking Garrett.
Yep.
So, I mean, bringing him back was definitely a win, but the price that they had to pay was just too exorbitant, especially since you're still paying a giant albatross for Deshaun Watson. So I like it, but I don't love it. I mean, I don't know how to feel about it, honestly. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty interesting to me. As a Ravens fan, I was a little excited. There was a little bit of some rumors and stuff going around that he might be going to the Ravens. I know Lamar retweeted one of his posts or something like that. So there was some talk. So I as a Ravens fan, I was jumping for joy. I thought he maybe would come to the rival in the AFC, but I mean, yeah, they spent a hefty price on him, and I think that was their main focus. I mean, you can kind of see how short their free agency list is. So obviously, he was pretty much their main focus. But I mean, he's a great player. I just don't know if he's worth 123 million for a guy that requested a trade.
Especially since he's kind of heading into his 30s. And I'm not saying, listen, Myles Garrett was one of the top 5 leaders in sacks this season or last season, and the team was terrible. Yeah. There's no doubt that he's still one of the best defensive players in football. I mean, he's literally 2 years removed from winning his first Defensive Player of the Year award. He's that special. But again, it's just, you thought the Deshaun Watson contract was bad. That's definitely the worst in NFL history by far. But down the road, that contract might come back to bite you in the butt, especially if your offense is still freaking garbage. But let's talk about the rest of their signings. Tevin Jenkins, I would say, is probably like their second best signing because, he was one of the best offensive linemen available. And I don't know what the terms are to be exact, but I think, for as porous and as horrid and as atrocious as that offensive line was last year, bringing in Tevin Jenkins will stabilize it somewhat, I'm hoping. But I also think signing Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is definitely a good depth piece because I always liked him with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's definitely a guy that can thrive if he gets more snaps and if he kind of, establishes himself as one of the guys. But who knows? Maybe it's just going to be more of a rotational piece. Re-signing Malik Collins or bringing Malik Collins in to 2 years, $20 million. I'm not exactly sure because he's like a pretty good run stuffer and he's not the worst in sack production, but I don't know. 2 years might be a little too much for that type of guy since you're kind of relying on him as a depth piece. But I think one of the more hilarious acquisitions was trading Dorian Thompson-Robinson for Kenny Pickett to be your backup, or at least we think it's going to be their backup because Jameis Winston's now with the New Jersey Giants. But overall, when it comes to a letter grade, what would you give them?
I think this is another C minus. I mean, it's good for them they got Myles Garrett back, but other than that, I mean, Jenkins is a decent signing, like you said. He's one of the best offensive linemen that was available at the time.
Yep.
But I mean, the Kenny Pickett trade, that doesn't make any sense, and I don't like Malik Collins that much for a $20 million deal. So I mean, and then Jerome Baker, obviously those guys are just kind of whatever. But
yeah, Baker and Bush, I feel like they're just depth pieces.
I mean, just depth pieces. So yeah, I think a C or C minus. A C.
I think C minus is good.
Yeah, I was about to say C is too generous.
Yeah. All right, now let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Definitely made a lot of moves. I mean, except at quarterback, since that's their biggest hole right now, or one of their biggest holes. But definitely the biggest move that they made was trading for DK Metcalf and giving him a 4-year, $132 million extension in the process. So, I honestly, listen, I wanted the Patriots to draft him when they had the opportunity because he's just an athletic freak. Yep. But, over the last couple, maybe 3 years in Seattle, he's really been more hot of cold. Obviously, he's a streaky player, and that, he's definitely the type of talent you want in this league because he's one of the tallest receivers. He's, one of the best contested catches in football, and nobody even talks about his speed, just the way he can just blaze past defenders. So that is someone that you definitely want to pair George Pickens with, without a doubt. But not only do you not know who you're throwing the football with, you don't know what you're getting with DK Metcalf. Are you going to get, a lot of the highs, or are there going to be games where, he just gets single covered and jammed at the line of scrimmage and he can't work his way off of defenders in cover 1 or, find his hole in cover 3, whatever the case may be. So I definitely think it's high risk, high reward, especially since you're putting 2 alpha receivers together. You don't really know who's going to be the number 1, and you don't know who's going to be throwing you the football, but who knows? I might be wrong with that one. I'm hoping I'm wrong because DK Metcalf is amazing. But what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, kind of said pretty much what I was going to say. The same thing. I like the Kenneth Gainwell signing. I think he's a good receiving back. Gives whoever their quarterback ends up being some options. Not much to say about DK. We all know about DK. That obviously that was a great pickup. Having him next to Pickens is going to be an insane combo.
Yep.
Do you worry a little bit about who's going to be the first option there? But they're both super athletic, relatively young guys. So there really shouldn't be a problem there. And they also, I like the Scotty Miller signing. Young guy from Tampa. I'm pretty sure.
I think it was with the Steelers at one point. I think it was last year. Yeah.
Was it? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
So I guess they're getting him back, but he's another young little quick guy that I think he'd be nice to pair up with those two. The Darius Slay signing was interesting. I think he's coming on. He's about to turn 35 years old, fresh off a Super Bowl.
And this might be his last year.
Could be his last year, exactly. So I kind of like that a little bit. He didn't have the greatest season, but he did have a couple picks, I think, in the postseason in the playoffs last year. So, not too bad from the Steelers, honestly. Kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah. They brought Mason Rudolph back to a 2-year deal. Their quarterback situation is just so depressing.
Yeah, it's so
you got
sad.
Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson in it right now. If you decide to go for Aaron Rodgers, you're bringing in a washed-up quarterback with character issues at 40 years old, or you could go into the draft and stay at whatever pick you have and possibly pick a reach like Jalen Milroe, and he might not develop into what you think he could be. And you're just setting yourself back. You set yourselves back even further, regardless who your head coach is, regardless if you have Mike Tomlin or not.
Yep.
Defensively, I like what they did. Brandon Echols, I always liked on a 2-year deal. Darius Slay, like I said, could be his last year. And you pair him with Joey Porter Jr., that could definitely be a lethal duo. And then Juan Thornhill, and pair him with Minka Fitzpatrick. I've always liked Juan Thornhill, with Kansas City and the Cleveland Browns. He's someone that is going to play hard every single game. And he's somebody that could do anything. Run, defend, pass coverage, whatever you need him to do. And he's a pretty underrated blitzer. I don't really think anybody really talks about that. So in terms of a letter grade, what do you think? Oh, and I almost forgot. Najee Harris is gone. So Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren, I don't know how good that's going to do for your run game. But I like Jalen Warren, but who knows what he can do as the lead focal back now. But what would you say? Letter grade.
I think a B is pretty fair. Without the real signing of a true quarterback, we don't really know what they're going to do. We hope it's in the draft. I hate the Steelers obviously because I'm a Ravens fan, so I hope they don't sign a quarterback. But you would think as a Steelers fan they'd probably get somebody in the draft. But I think a B is fair. They got some decent guys on defense with Slay and Thornhill, and obviously they added DK. So they did a couple of good moves on both sides of the ball. It's just the quarterback. So I think a B is good until we know who their quarterback is, and then maybe I could change my grade. But I think a B or a B- is fair.
Yeah. All right, let's go down to the Houston Texans and try to speed this up because I don't want to hold up everybody too long.
Yep.
Houston was definitely active in free agency, but I don't really necessarily think it's the best because listen, you got names: Christian Kirk, Cam Robinson, and Ingram. You re-signed Danielle Hunter to a big deal. Derek Stingley Jr., he's, getting a big 3-year extension worth $90 million. I think that's a big win. Yep. And then you traded for C.J. Gardner-Johnson for Kenyon Green, but and you traded away Laramie Tunsil to Washington for a big deal. But, did they really get better, though? Because Christian Kirk is coming off 2 potentially season-ending injuries in 2 consecutive years. Cam Robinson, there's a reason why, he wasn't really the most sought-out offensive lineman in free agency. And Ed Ingram, he's okay, but he's not great. And I don't really know if those two sign your offensive line issues, even with cutting Shaq Mason. If it wasn't for Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud would have been the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. And I don't know if these are big improvements, but, I And you'll let Stephon Diggs go. You might miss Tank Dell for the rest of the season, but that's still gruesome knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, because of your division, you're still good, but I don't know. I don't know how much better you got. So, what would you say for a grade here?
Yeah, I mean, with the uncertainty of Tank Dell, I love the Christian Kirk signing. I think that's a great trade they did with the Jaguars. I like that. But it looks like they focused a lot on defense, which was interesting.
Yeah, Daryl Taylor, I like.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they got a lot of guys on
defense. They did fine
on defense. Yeah, like Gardner Johnson, Stingley, Darby, I like too. So I mean, they got a lot of nice pieces on defense. So for a grade, I'd probably give them a B+. Honestly, I like what they did with their current situation, with the uncertainty of Tank Dell and that offensive line and things like that. I think a B+ is fair, but I think they definitely could have done worse.
I probably would give it a C just because, like, I feel like you could have done more on offense, with all the uncertainty surrounding that unit. You just want to make sure that CJ Stroud doesn't continue to regress. And, I hope that he proves that last year was just a freaking sophomore fluke.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that they're a team that should be better than what they were last year. But just for whatever reason, they just weren't. And they got that exposed against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
But let's move down to the Indianapolis Colts, a team that is definitely not doing the best because the QB competition is now between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones.
Oh, Jesus.
Good God.
Is there a worse QB situation in the NFL? I guess the Steelers could be a close second.
Yeah, I definitely say the Steelers are, but oh my God, the Indianapolis Colts. They really are still deluded into thinking that they're competitive. I like that they signed Charvarius Ward.
Yeah.
He's an awesome player.
He is.
And Cameron Bynum. Those were definitely two big defensive players that you needed. So, no question with that. But Daniel Jones, man. Do we even need to talk about this? I think we know what we're getting.
We know what we're getting with him, I think. Misery.
For a grade, C-. And that's because I like the last two signings. That's the only reason why I'm even giving it that high of a grade.
I agree. 100%.
And Khalil Herbert is not that bad either.
No. Solid.
All right. Let's that didn't take too long at all. Let's go to Jacksonville here.
Yep.
They were pretty quiet in free agency. I think they let a lot more players go than they acquired, but Patrick Mekari, I definitely think that's a big win because you needed offensive line help coming over from Baltimore, obviously. That was someone I wanted the Patriots to get. So I don't know if that's a big loss for you guys, for the Ravens, but what would you say? Is it a good move or is it, someone that you would have wanted back?
I mean, I definitely would have liked to have him back, obviously. Had a pretty solid season for us last year, but, there's better guys that we could have let go. So, I mean, it doesn't – It makes me a little upset, but
that's fair.
Nothing that prevents me from going to sleep at night.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
De'Ami Brown, definitely an interesting signing. Robert Hainsey, kind of a little bit steep of an overpayment. 3 years, $21 million. Just because I watched him in Tampa and he wasn't horrible, but he wasn't great. I don't know. He's got familiarity with Liam Cohen, who's the offensive coordinator, so it makes a lot of sense there. But Eric Murray and Jordan Lewis getting 3-year deals. Jordan Lewis is definitely an awesome nickel corner, so that's a big win. But Eric Murray, a 3-year deal? Was he that good last year? Because I don't remember this at all.
Me neither.
Because I wasn't even sure this guy was still in the league, to be quite honest with you.
Me neither.
I completely forgot about him. But let me look this up on my phone right here because I might miss something. I mean, listen, last year with the Texans, he actually made a few key plays. I think he had a pick six in the playoff game against the Chargers last year, or it had some type of big play. I could be wrong. I'm probably just spitballing here, but.
And another interesting thing, Maurice Jones-Drew is a reporter now.
What's that?
Maurice Jones-Drew is a NFL reporter now. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, he's been on NFL Network. You didn't know this?
Wow. I didn't know that
for a while.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I don't know. That might have been a little too steep of a deal here.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I don't know. He's not a horrible player, but I feel like he's just a rotational guy.
Yeah, 22 mil. That's a lot.
And then Nick Mullins is the new backup because Matt Jones is gone, and I don't think CJ Beathard's on the roster anymore. I don't think he's been there for a while. But for a letter grade, I don't know. D plus? What would
I
you
was
say?
gonna say, yeah, this might be the first D of the video of the stream.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I think they'll probably improve in the draft. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But let's go to this next team, the Tennessee Titans. Wait, they signed Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. Oh, God.
Will Levis has some comp.
Or Cam Ward,
Or
depending.
Cam Ward, hopefully.
They
draft.
I like Van Jefferson.
Me too.
I like Lorenzo Carter. I love Cody Barton.
Yep.
I love Cody Barton.
Yep.
Johnny Hecker and Morgan Cox.
Yep.
Those are guys you want.
Need.
Why in God's name is Dan Moore Jr. getting a 4-year, $82 million deal? Why? He was a freaking turnstile in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I mean, I think Steelers fans would say that it was too big of a contract for them to give out. Like, really?
Yep.
4 years? 50 guaranteed? I don't know. I just don't like it. And especially if you don't draft Cam Ward or Shedeur with your first overall pick.
Yep.
Or change at the quarterback position. But Kevin Zeidler, always one of the best offensive linemen. He's older, but I mean, he's still serviceable.
Yep.
Yeah. But what would you say for a letter grade here?
A letter grade? I think this would be somewhere again in the C range. You know, I like Van Jefferson. You know, I like, I hate to talk about special teams that much, but Hecker, Cox, Sly, all those guys, are pretty decent in the special teams world. So
I don't know if they're gonna miss Joey. I don't know if Joey Sly is gonna be that good, but
I mean,
because he was on the Patriots last year, he was just as what he was when he was with Carolina and the 49ers and wherever else he was. Washington, has a big leg, but not always reliable.
Yeah, it's not always accurate, but yeah, I don't know, just okay for them. Nothing crazy.
All right, let's go to the next team here. The Denver Broncos. Wow, Denver Broncos, wasn't expecting that.
That's bad.
There were, well, not anymore. You got Bo Nix. So Jarrett Stidham is officially going to be the backup for the next 2 years. That's, we could get that out of the way. 3 big signings really stand out to me. Evan Ingram, Dre Greenlaw, and Talanoa Hufanga.
Yep.
I didn't even know Hufanga was a free agent. But now that I did know, or when I found out, I wasn't surprised that the 49ers let him go, considering that they had a lot of cap space to clear out so they could get Brock Purdy his big boy contract. But listen, Evan Ingram, they needed an athletic tight end or someone that was going to be more reliable in the passing game. I like Adam Trevin and Lucas Kroll, but I just don't know if they're really the guys that are going to really be that for Bo Nix.
Yep.
Dre Greenlaw, if he's fully healthy, that guy is a freaking demon because he was definitely someone that any team could use. And the Denver Broncos were so lucky to get him.
Yep.
And same thing with the 49ers with Hufanga because, yes, he's coming off a pretty serious knee injury, but you can't tell me that there aren't a lot of safeties in the league that are better than Talanoa Hufanga. Kyle Hamilton is definitely one of them, but I feel like Hufanga is at the second or the third spot. So what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, Evan Ingram, I think he had a pretty decent couple of years in Jacksonville, and I love that signing for them. That was kind of one of the positions that I think they struggled with the most on their offense. But they do have a nice offense brewing there in Denver with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, who they kind of had a little bit of a breakout game in the playoffs against the Chiefs. So I love that. And like you said, Dre Greenlaw, I mean, if he's healthy, besides last year, the 2 years before that, he had 220-plus total tackle seasons.
Whew.
So, I mean, just think about that for a second. And they got him for a pretty damn good deal. 3 years, $30 million. I think he's a $60-70 million player at his prime easily. So, I mean, for the Broncos to get that kind of deal with that kind of caliber player and that potential back-to-back 120 tackle seasons from a linebacker, I mean, I think that's a steal and a half.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, special teams players might not get the most accolades or recognition, but I think getting Trent Sherfield to a 2-year deal, that's someone that I think the Broncos could definitely use because he's definitely been one of the best special teams players over the last year or two. Maybe not the most reliable offensive player, but special teams wise, yeah, you could definitely have him. But letter grade, what would you say?
Letter grade, I'd probably give this one a B or a B minus. I think nothing too crazy, but definitely some key pieces that have
and
potential.
CJ Jones, that's another guy.
Right. So I mean, again, they got some guys like I think Drake Greenlaw. You could say that's a gamble getting him, but you don't know how well he's going to play coming off that injury, so you are a little nervous about how that's going to work out. But everything else, okay, nothing crazy. So I think a B minus or a B is fair for the Broncos.
Yep. All right, let's go to Kansas City here and see what they've got up our sleeves. Gardner Minshew going to be Patrick Mahomes' backup, which is good for him. I mean, Gardner Minshew definitely deserves to, be a part of a winning organization. Bailey Zappi, going to be the third stringer. Love that. And, really, it wasn't like, obviously, like the two biggest moves they made was, keeping Trey Smith and franchise tagging him. Hopefully, they still get a long-term deal done with him. I'm surprised they haven't already. Nick Bolton getting a 3-year deal with $45 million. He's still a very young player. He's extremely athletic, and those are two guys that I think Kansas City definitely should have kept for sure. They brought back Kareem Hunt. They signed Elijah Mitchell to a minimum deal. Hollywood Brown is back. Am I missing anybody else? They signed Jalen Moore to be the left tackle. 2 years for $30 million. I'm like, all right, he did pretty good in backup duty when Trent Williams was out. So I definitely think that was the biggest weakness that Kansas City needed to address because, the left tackle was just a startling, position for Kansas City to deal with. But other than that, I don't know. Christian Fulton to a 2-year deal. I mean, when you pair him with Trent McDuffie, all right, I guess it makes sense. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll do better in Steve Spagnuolo's system. But to me, I don't really think the Chiefs had to do too much this offseason. I mean, listen, you made it to 3 straight Super Bowls. You still have the nucleus intact. I think it's just making sure that you let this fatigue wear out and then you come back stronger the next year. That's just me personally. And, you retool that with the draft. But I don't know. I'd probably give it like a B just because, listen, you didn't make too many big splashes, but at the same time, you don't really have to because you're still the envy of the league and you're still the standard. Even though you got pummeled, you're still the team that everybody tries to chase.
Right.
Without a doubt. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they made all the necessary moves, right? The ones that they were required to make, the ones that everybody thought they were going to make. I think they did. They got a few new guys here and there, but mostly kind of re-signings, like some of these other bigger teams, like the Ravens and things like that. So I mean, I think a B is a great rating for the Chiefs here because you're right. This is the team everybody wants to chase, right? You make it to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. You don't really want to change your team too much. So I mean, I think what they did is perfect. So a B is good for the Chiefs.
Yep. All right, let's go down the list here to the Raiders. Obviously, the biggest move they made, trading for Geno Smith, a 3rd-round pick. So obviously, they needed to do something at quarterback, and unfortunately, they didn't have the necessary, they didn't have the draft position to try and trade up for a quarterback if they wanted to. But now that he's reunited with Pete Carroll, I mean, I feel like you're getting the same thing you got in Seattle. Not the best, not top 5, but absolutely not terrible. You're getting above average starting level play. And hopefully you give Geno Smith enough, a good enough supporting cast. Brock Bowers is a good start. Raheem Mostert, I don't really know. He's kind of an aging player, and he definitely had a breakout season a couple years ago when he led the league in total touchdowns, but I feel like that was kind of more of a one-year wonder thing than anything. After kind of laying low in the shadows with the 49ers. Obviously, he had sensational performances with that organization as well, but just you're kind of getting a streaky running back is what I'm saying. But and then Alex Kappa, I mean, listen, I thought it would be great for the Cincinnati Bengals to sign him when he was a free agent the first time, coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But obviously, he didn't live up to the contract that he got. And now you're just hoping he could kind of bounce back to form. But offensively, you're definitely improved, but not by a whole ton. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, part of me wishes they went a little bit more on offense to give Brock Bowers a little bit of help. I think him and Jacoby Myers are kind of stuck on an island out there by themselves. But I mean, I hope Geno Smith can make it happen for Oakland
Vegas,
not Oakland. You're right, Vegas. I always say that.
Yeah, it's like calling the Chargers San Diego.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it still feels weird to me, but
yep.
I mean, they're definitely taking a step in the right direction. I think not getting the draft pick they wanted really solved some issues for them in free agency. I love the Raheem Mostert signing. I think they definitely had some running back problems, so I think he could definitely help them out with that. And then we all know about Max Crosby, how big of
that's definitely the best move they made.
So yeah, I mean, overall, not a bad free agency from the Raiders. I'm interested to see how their season goes. I'm excited for their future.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything to talk about when it comes to Max Crosby. Like, that's just he's one of the most unstoppable defensive players in the league. I just wish his team was better.
Right.
And I kind of was hoping that he would ask for a trade just so we could, because he deserves better. But
right. Exactly.
Other than that, Jeremy Chin, Isaiah Palomalu, Eric Stokes, Darnay Holmes, Landon Roberts. I'd say it was a pretty average offseason. I feel like you could tick it up a bit just because you were able to keep Max Crosby long term. But what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, they signed the people back that they needed to, and they added a couple new pieces that can definitely help them. So, I mean, if I were to give them a grade, I would probably say a B, I think. A B or a B plus. Did what they had to do. They signed a couple of decent guys on the defensive end that can probably help them out in the long run. So I think a B is probably better for the Raiders.
A B. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely go with B minus, B around that range. So I wouldn't disagree with you there. Maybe a C plus just because I don't know how much better your offense got, but
yeah,
they got a lot of work to do in the draft.
Yep.
Without a doubt. But let's go to the Chargers and take a look for them. Honestly, when I look at the list, I mean, there are like three big names that really step out. Obviously, you brought Mike Williams back. I mean, I'm not going to list that as one of my three, but I mean, listen, you're reuniting him with Justin Herbert. I don't know. Bringing back former players doesn't always work out for a team, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But Najee Harris only getting a 1-year deal.
Yeah, surprising.
So who knows what they do at the running back position because J.K. Dobbins is obviously going to be your starter.
Yep.
So really, it's just a competition between him and a former Raven, ironically, Gus Edwards for the second running back spot.
Yep.
But then you got Tyler Conklin, Andre James. You re-signed Bradley Bozeman. You brought in Mekhi Becton. And you re-signed Khalil Mack for 1 more year. And you brought in some depth pieces on defense like Perriman and Dante Jackson, Elijah Molden, Benjamin St. Juice. Molden getting a 3-year extension. So obviously he had a breakout season last year. But a lot of moves that they made, not a lot of big splashes, but obviously some new names in there. I don't know if this really moves the needle, but what would you say? What would you give it a letter grade?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think this is kind of similar to the Chiefs. They signed a couple new guys that could probably help them, but mostly just re-signing guys that made an impact on the team last year that they love for the future. Yeah, I mean, for a letter grade, I would probably give it another B, honestly. I mean, like you said, the re-signing of Elijah Molden or signing him again, and just guys like that have, played for them in the past and done pretty well, like Mike Williams. Again, you never know what he's going to do, but I don't know. I think a B is a solid grade. Sign a bunch of guys that could definitely help them out in the future. that helped them out last season, and some new guys that definitely have some potential.
The only reason why I would give this a C is because this just still proves that you're going to be a second fiddle to the Chiefs, no matter what. Because, I mean, listen, you bring in Najee Harris, solidifying the offensive line. That's always a good plus. Defensively, not really doing too much on that besides bringing back, Khalil Mack and signing some depth guys. I don't know. This just feels like you're not a horrible team because, hell, you made the freaking playoffs last year. But at the same time, you're coming off Justin Herbert's worst performance as a starter by far. Your defense did well. It was one of the best scoring units in the league. But at the same time, you let Bosa go. Asante Samuel is still a free agent. Asante Samuel Jr. Who knows how much Derwin James still has left in the tank. And offensively, right now, it just looks like Ladd McConkey or bust, especially since you let Josh Palmer walk away in free agency, who might not have been like their best or most important key playmaker, but, it's depth that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I feel like the ceiling for them is just 10-7 or 11-6 at this point, but they feel like an 8-9 win team right now. So that's what I would say.
Agreed.
But let's go into the NFC here and take a look at the Dallas Cowboys. Well, at least they did stuff this time, but they signed a bunch of busts. They brought back Osa Odighizuwa, which is great. That is a huge deal for them. They brought back Dante Fowler after spending a year in Washington, but Miles Sanders flopped in Carolina. Javonte Williams, hold on one sec. Swell up to the top of it. Javonte Williams hasn't been the same since he got injured a few years ago. Kyer Elam, total bust. There's a reason why the Bills traded him away for pretty much nothing. Peyton Turner never really reached his potential with the New Orleans Saints. Solomon Thomas, third overall pick, been a backup fringe player since. Kenneth Murray Jr., not that good. There's a reason why, he's been let go a few times over the last 3 seasons. Big wins, though, CJ Goodwin and Marquise Pell. Those are like 2 of your better players. And then Kevontae Turpin being the highest paid special teams player in the league. I don't think that's any doubt, but I don't think the Cowboys even care about winning anymore. They just care about attention and ratings, and they just want to still be in the spotlight. And you know what? To get up and first takes credit, and anybody else that decides to give a crap about the Cowboys, the Skip Bayless show, they're doing a good job at it, but dear God, they're so irrelevant, and yet they're being shoved down our throats anytime a football topic is being discussed on a nationally broadcasted show. Yep. So that's good. I love the state of the national sports media right now. Just absolutely wonderful. But what letter grade would you give it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, nothing really pops off the list for me. I like the Javonte Williams signing he had a decent season in Denver, but I'd probably give it a C. I think that's a solid rating. Signed a couple guys that are kind of in the back ends of their career, just kind of been tossed around a little bit. So I think a C is a pretty decent, might be too fair of a grade.
Yeah. And there are 2 more things I want to bring up. One, Zach Martin retired, future Hall of Famer. So that's a big loss. The second, the Dallas Cowboys have not signed a free agent worth more than $6 million per year since Greg Hardy in 2015, which is just so bad on
it's incredible
multiple fronts that I'm not even going to get into. But anyways, let's move down the list to the New Jersey Giants because they got their quarterback situation addressed. Tommy DeVito, Jameis Winston. I'm not the best at making the W's, but I'm not going to eat it. And then the Danger Witch, Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson, a 1-year deal worth up to $21 million. And yet they have the 3rd overall pick. Before we get into that, though, here's my thing. How do you not pay Saquon, one of the richest deals for a running back, but yet Darius Slayton is still around? That's what I don't get. Not a horrible player, but damn, he's like a freaking cockroach. He just doesn't go away. And he's not horrible at all. It's just, I mean, you don't bring Saquon back, yet you're like, Darius Slayton, just put the number down on the check and we'll do the rest. That's it. But what would you say? What were your thoughts on the quarterback moves they made, the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're not drafting a quarterback in the draft.
I mean, they still could. Well,
unless
actually,
they want to pull
now
a
it's
Atlanta
probably going to be
Falcons.
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, it screams
this
Travis
point.
Hunter unless they want to pull a Falcons and draft somebody. But yeah, just really surprising. Like you said, the Slayton one is interesting because he's a good player, but $36 million is, I don't know, that seems a little much to me. But other than that, just a bunch of guys that are average at best.
Well, there are two guys that I think are going to be great: Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland.
Yeah,
I love that the Giants got him. Javon Holland was the best safety in free agency, and Paulson Adebo, he is definitely a guy that can improve their secondary big time.
Yeah.
So I think those two are huge.
Yeah, they could have some potential. But
for a letter grade, what would you give them?
I would probably say a C or a C plus. I think that's probably pretty fair.
I'd give it like a C minus. Yeah, probably a C just because of the two guys that I just brought up. But I don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to their offense. Because you got the 3rd overall pick. You had a chance to get the number 1, but you decided to win and, ruin that by beating the Colts.
Right.
But listen, when they signed Jameis Winston, I thought they were done. I thought, okay, just draft somebody or hope to God that Ward or Sanders fall into your lap and you'll be fine there. But for whatever reason, Joe Schoen was like, all right, well, we might as well just go with it because obviously if these two get taken before us by the Titans or the Browns, then we might be stuck. And we might either have to trade down or we're probably going to, deal with Jameis Winston throwing metric tons of pick sixes. So, and they gave Jamie Gillen a 3-year deal worth $10.2 million. So, that's beside the point. Yeah, the Giants are they're a freaking laughing stock right now. And I hope that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen can turn it around so that they're not unemployed. But yeah, this is that Hard Knocks season from last year. There's a reason why Bill Belichick decided to back out of it with North Carolina because they apparently agreed to do it, but then they were like, "Nah, we're good. We don't want to do what the Giants did." So, all right, let's move down the list. We're on Philly now.
Yep.
So there wasn't really much that they did. I mean, besides, they gave Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back contract, well deserved. He was the key difference maker to them winning a championship. Mm-hmm. Lane Johnson staying for a couple more years, future Hall of Fame right tackle. But then other than that, I mean, Kenyon Green is your Mekhi Becton replacement, I guess. Yeah. And then you re-sign Zach Bond. That's your biggest win. But for the most part, I feel like it's just depth pieces.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. Like you said, the Zach Bond, obviously that's a good re-sign. And of course, with Saquon, without him, I don't think they make it nearly as far as they did or as they would have without him. So, I mean, I like that. One thing that I found kind of interesting was that they signed A.J. Dillon. That
quad masters in your backfield.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that was a little interesting just because he's getting a little older now.
He's coming off an injury.
And he's coming off an injury. So that just seems to me like you're lighting money on fire. But I mean, hey, I'm not the owner, or the GM. So what the hell do I know? But
what I will say is the Eagles in free agency, they were more known for losing players than acquiring them.
Right.
Milton Williams left. Darius Slay got cut. James Bradbury got cut. C.J. Gardner-Johnson got traded.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anybody I missed. I mean, Dallas Goedert was on the trade block. You lost Mekhi Becton. Mm-hmm. So, and Brandon Graham retired. So, yeah, it was a lot of turnover on that defense. But, I mean, listen, with Vic Fangio running it, as long as you still have, your big guys up front and your rookies, your studs, and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean continuing to develop, then along with Reed Blankenship, then I think they're going to be fine. So I'm not too worried about it. Hopefully they kind of retool that side of the ball and in the draft, but I give it the same grade as the Chiefs because you're really just making sure that you're filling in some minor patches. Yep. I mean, you're going to be the best team to beat in the NFC for the time being. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens from here.
Yep, agreed.
All right, now let's go to Washington here because they didn't have like the biggest free agency so far. I mean, listen, they signed Deebo Samuel, or they traded for Deebo Samuel. Yep. They traded a haul for Laramie Tunsil.
Mm-hmm.
But what were your thoughts, first of all, before we get into everything else, with those two moves?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Deebo is one of those gamble trades, right? Like, the potential's there with him, right? But with how his season kind of went last year, you're a little unsure. Right. There's a lot of uncertainty with him, especially coming in. But with that offense and Daniels, I mean, that's going to be kind of a scary duo in the backfield with how they like to run Deebo. But I obviously love the Tunsil trade. I mean, one of the greatest offensive tackles in the game right now. So, I mean, I think that was a great pickup. So, I mean, overall, I mean, if Deebo pans out well, I think this is great for the Commanders.
Yeah, with Deebo, I think it's a pretty good trade. I think it's a bargain because he's in the final year of his extension, and you're not asking Deebo to be a number one. That goes to Terry McLaurin. Right. So I think, listen, it was a bad year for Deebo Samuel. Some injuries, a lot of drops. So hopefully he kind of regains that form as like a complimentary option, as like a number two. I definitely think he can still play, especially when you give him Jaden Daniels. But I mean, you just hope that the inconsistencies don't continue to fester and continue on and kind of derail his career. So I like that. And then the Larry Tunsil one, I think this is definitely a big high risk, high reward because he's one of the best blindside blockers in the league. But last year he was one of the most penalized players in football. So you're just hoping that he cleans that up.
Yep.
And then other than that, I mean, you re-signed Zach Ertz, some depth pieces on your offense. Michael Gallup coming out of retirement. That was definitely pretty interesting. But defensively, scroll to the bottom a little bit. As a Patriots fan, Jonathan Jones and Dietrich Wise, I feel like they're just going to be more rotational players because Dietrich Wise is not exactly like an explosive edge rusher. And Jonathan Jones, I like him in the slot. When you put him outside, not the best one. But a really interesting one, Javon Kinlaw getting a 3-year deal worth $45 million.
Yeah.
Because he definitely regained some of his form with the Jets, and now he's coming over to Dan Quinn's defense.
Yep.
I definitely think it's a gamble, considering that it's a 3-year deal with $30 million guaranteed. But listen, they needed to beef up that D-line. That's definitely one of the biggest needs that they needed to address. I don't know if it's the best, but, I mean, I'd give it like a B, maybe a B+. What would you say?
Yeah, I think a B is a great grade. Kind of like you said, they signed a couple guys who, are a little bit of a gamble, and, you don't know how they're going to turn out, but they have the skill, right? Like, they're good enough. They have a really high upside, but a really low side. So, I mean, I think the Commanders are willing to take a couple risks because of the quarterback that they have. I think he can make a lot of these players a lot better than they have been playing in the past. And I think a lot of players coming to the Commanders are more excited to play better because of what the Commanders did last season. I think Deebo is a perfect example of that, coming from a 49ers team that underperformed significantly last season. And I think that was because of injuries a little bit. But, I mean, I think definitely a lot of people had higher hopes for the 49ers coming into last season. So I think now that Deebo can leave that team, now coming to a team who's just coming off NFC Conference Championship game, I think he's super excited to get into this offense and get started with them and try to contribute and play it to as best as he can to try and maybe get the Commanders over that hump this next season to maybe even a Super Bowl.
Well said. Well said. All right, let's move down the list here. and talk about the Chicago Bears. Definitely one of the biggest wins that I think that the Chicago Bears did was improve that offensive line.
Yeah.
You trade for Jonah Jackson, trading for Joe Thuney and a stunner. Initially, just because, he was definitely one of the best offensive linemen the Chiefs had. Signing Drew Dahlman, the best center available to a 3-year deal. And you pair him with Darnell Wright. And I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember who their left tackle was. Was it Braxton Jones? Braxton Jones. That's who it was. I'm sorry. You pair them with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, and you keep some of the guys around. That Bears offense definitely got better. It's definitely more innovative, and I think that Ben Johnson, the first thing that he did was you got to improve the trenches. Not only did you do that on the offensive side, but defensively you signed Dayo Adenigbo and Grady Jarrett to 3-year deals worth a lot of money, over $40 million per year for both guys. So I definitely say it's definitely a B-level draft. But what are your thoughts? I'll let you break it down.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree. I would maybe bump it down to a B-. But as a Ravens fan, seeing Devin Duvernay on them it kind of hurts my heart a little bit. But
yeah.
I'm also surprised that the Commanders let go of Zacchaeus. I thought he was a pretty, decent receiver for them last season. Had a couple big clutch, big time catches. So I was surprised that they let him go, but again, I understand it because they got in return Debo, so that's not really that big of a deal. But I mean, I like the Grady Jarrett signing. I think he has a lot of upside. He was for the Falcons last season, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I like that. $43 million, maybe a little steep, but I mean, he's got a lot of upside. Really good player and really good potential for him. So I mean,
I feel like the Grady Jarrett one is a little steep too, though, because he hasn't really been the same in a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like the 3-year deal was just a little too big of a price to pay, but maybe that's just free agency. Maybe that's just what it is. So,
right.
All right. Let's go down to this next team here, the Detroit Lions. Honestly, I think the big win was DJ Reed. Definitely one of the best number 2 corners in football. Someone that could definitely help out your secondary along with Devontae Maddox. Derek Barnes getting a big extension. You re-sign Marcus Davenport. But, I mean, with the Lions, they didn't really do much besides, sign a few key depth guys and, a couple of splashes along the way. So, I don't know. I probably would give it the same as the Eagles, but a little lower considering that you were one and done in the playoffs. But what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of similar to the Chiefs, I think, and the Eagles. I mean, people. I think sometimes people forget a little bit last year. Before that Commanders game, they were the clear favorites to win the Super Bowl. So, I mean, I think they know they have the key pieces to win. And, I hate to say it because I love the Commanders so much, but I think that was a fluke game from the Lions. I think they got caught up in the moment a little bit. But they definitely have the pieces. We could see in the regular season, obviously, they had the pieces to make it a deep run in the playoffs. So I think similar to the teams we've been talking about, Eagles and all the teams that make it deep in playoffs, they have the skill sets just like them. So not needing to go out and get too many crazy new players, just making sure you keep that depth on both sides of the ball. We can obviously see was a focal point for the Lions. So I think the same grade as the Eagles would be fair.
Yep. I agree with you that they were caught up in the moment, and I understand that they went to the NFC Championship the year before, but I feel like before that playoff run, when you get 2 weeks off a bye, you're thinking, oh yeah, we're gonna definitely make a revenge run. It's time for us to shine, and then they, run into a just as hopeful of a franchise as the Washington Commanders, and the more you turn the ball over, the further you set yourselves back.
Yeah.
So I definitely would agree with you, but. Let's move down the list here and talk about the Green Bay Packers. Literally listen, they made a couple big moves. Aaron Banks, one of the best guards available from the 49ers, and Nate Hobbs, a pretty solid corner, but the Nate Hobbs one, I mean, that's a pretty big contract because what do you do with Jair Alexander?
Right.
because he's been on the training block. And then re-signing Brandon McManus to a 3-year deal, I definitely think it's a good move considering that he definitely helped clean up the special teams woes, since he signed in the middle of the season. But yeah, I mean, they didn't really do much, but still few big moves and big positive ones as well. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't make the most moves out of everybody in free agency, but yeah, like you said, I love the Aaron Banks signing. I think that's great for them. Get that beef up that O line, and yeah, I mean, I love Nate Hobbs as a player. So yeah, not too shabby from the Packers.
Yeah. For a grade, what would you say?
I think a C plus or a B is pretty good here.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It's definitely a C plus for sure.
I think that's a perfect grade for them.
I mean, because you only wait what, like for five moves so far.
Yeah. So
all right, for Minnesota, they let Sam Darnold go to Seattle, and they are most like that means that JJ McCarthy is going to be QB1 for now. Who knows if they even sign Aaron Rodgers or not and complete the Brett Favre prophecy.
Yep.
But Aaron Jones re-signing him, acquiring Jordan Mason, signing a bunch of offensive linemen. I mean, Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from the Colts. Those are two interior guys that I think could help them out a ton. Yep. And then defensively, Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen and bringing back Byron Murphy. This was a pretty successful offseason. I mean, bringing back, Harrison Smith. Isaiah Rodgers, I think that, I don't know. I feel like he was more of a one-year wonder last year since he was a depth piece. But listen, Jonathan Allen and, Javon Hargrave, those are two defensive tackles that I think are definitely going to make this pass rush, make that defensive line a hell of a lot better, especially for Brian Flores, who loves to blitz and loves to generate enough pressure. But what grade would you give this team?
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like they focused a lot on defense, so which
is not surprising.
Which is not surprising, exactly. So I think a B plus is pretty good here. I think, like you said, they signed a bunch of guys that definitely can evidence an impact with Byron Murphy, and Harrison Smith's obviously coming back with his cane. So I mean, that's interesting for them. But yeah, I think a B minus is a good grade for the Vikings.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just texting my mom right here. But go down the list and let's talk about the next NFC team that we got. We're on to the South, the Atlanta Falcons. So you got some ties with the team.
Yep, for
Jake
sure.
Matthews coming back, which is always great.
Big.
But I'll let you break it down.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Jake Matthews deal, that was definitely big for us. A couple other ones that were pretty interesting, Diablo, which I thought was pretty interesting for the Falcons, as our defense wasn't the greatest. I don't know why I keep saying our, but since I live in Atlanta, it's just a bad habit. But I think defense was definitely more of a focal point for us. I think with Michael Penix and kind of the young pieces in our offense, I think I'm okay with how the offense is running. So I'm glad that they focused a little more on defense and the offensive line to protect that young quarterback that we have. So, I mean, I'm pretty happy. I would have liked to see a little bit more moves on the offensive end, maybe some younger guys, but that's always what the draft is for. So, overall, I mean, I'm pretty happy with what the Falcons did.
I think it sucks that the Raiders lost both their linebackers. Because, I mean, Diablo and Spillane are two guys that I think any team could sign a free agency. Yeah. And I felt like the Raiders should have kept at least one of them. Yep. But Mike Hughes getting a 3-year deal, I didn't think he was that good at all. I've never been a big fan of his. I always thought he was a reach when the Vikings drafted him in the first round, and he bounced around since then. Yep. So that's like the one loss I have. But Liam McCullough, the long snapper, getting a 4-year extension. Obviously, that's probably the most untalked position in football just because, he's just snapping the ball on special teams plays. But, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the worst offseason they had or the worst free agency class. Morgan Fox is a good player. Jamal Agnew as well. So, I'd say it's like a C-plus type of free agency.
Yeah.
Would you say the same thing?
Yeah, I was gonna say C plus or B minus. I think is really good for them.
Yeah. All right, let's go down the list. The Carolina Panthers. I think the best move they made, I mean, that didn't have to do with bringing in a new guy, was J.C. Horn being the highest paid quarterback in football. Definitely a risk because you just hope he can stay healthy.
Right.
But when he's on the field, he has proven to be one of the best quarterbacks in football, for sure.
For sure.
What would you say?
No, yeah, totally agree. I think $100 million is a lot of money for a guy who you don't know what he's gonna do. But again, you're willing to take that gamble because you know how good he can be, right? So, I mean, you give and you take with the Panthers, but I think at this point they're willing to take a gamble on anything, because they need something. They need some kind of pulse on that defense.
Yep. Rico Dowdle coming in to complement Chuba Hubbard, so that's a pretty good quarterback deal, which is honestly a bigger loss for the Cowboys. Like you let Rico Dowdle go, who came alive in the second half of the season, yet you throw money at an injury-riddled running back that hasn't been good in 3 years. Don't know the logic there, but other than that, I mean, Pat Jones II, I think is an underrated player. Deshaun Warren getting a lot of money coming over from Kansas City. Scroll down the list a little bit. Because there was one guy I like. Trayvon Merrick, 3-year, $51 million deal. He was definitely one of the best safeties in the draft class or free agency class. So the Raiders lost a lot of key pieces. And obviously it was to keep Max Crosby, which I get, but it did come with a big price.
Yep.
So for the Panthers, I like what they did in free agency. I'd give it a B. And you just hope that Bryce Young can pick up where he left off in the second half of the season because he really got his career back on track.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a B is a perfect grade. I mean, with how Bryce Young was playing towards the end of the year, I think Panthers fans are really excited for this next season.
Yeah. And let's move down the list here. We got the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, they're in cap hell. Yet they weren't hesitant to give Justin Reed a 3-year deal worth $30 million. Yep. I've always liked Justin Reed. I think he is someone that this defense absolutely needs. Yep. Just a hard hitter and someone that can literally play anything. Juwan Johnson getting a 3-year extension. Brandon Cooks coming back after spending some time with, bouncing around the league after getting traded all over the place. Funny or not, that was the first time Brandon Cooks ever experienced free agency. Did you know that?
No.
So I think he got traded to New England. He got traded to the Rams, and then he went to Houston and then Dallas, and now he's back to New Orleans. And then, you got Cam Jordan coming back, Chase Young. So, I mean, they did whatever they could with the limited amount of resources they had. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not great. I'd say it's average. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think average is the perfect word for the Saints. With their whole quarterback situation, Rattler or whatever is going to happen there, you're kind of unsure about what your offense is going to look like. I love Juwan Johnson personally. I think he is a sleeper tight end, but he definitely deserves all of that $30 million that he's getting because he's a beast. If you watch any of the Saints last year, I mean, he was the only pulse in that offense pretty much the whole year. So I mean, he's a beast. Chase Young's obviously a beast. Cam Jordan is obviously can be a beast. He is getting pretty old, but we know how good he can be. And
Isaac Yiadom's signing a bargain deal.
Exactly, yeah, $9 million. I mean, what for 3 years? What a steal that is.
Yep.
So I mean, honestly, the Saints, I'm loving what I'm seeing down in New Orleans.
I mean, I don't know how much better of a team they're going to be.
Right.
With Kellen Moore and a regressed defense and an offense that's just not there, regardless of who the quarterback is.
Right.
I can't see more than 7 wins for them, to be quite honest, especially since you lost Marshawn Lattimore, you lost Paulson Adebo, Derek Carr can even stay healthy. Alvin Kamara, he's never really been the same. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, they're coming back from injury. So there's a lot of things that need to go right for this team to kind of be a surprise team. So I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I mean, I'm just hoping that they do better than what they were last year, or they look better than what they were last year. So, all right, let's go down the list here. I don't think we have too many teams to go over. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they were the first team to make a move to sign Hassan Reddick to a 1-year, $14 million deal. Really just a prove it deal. But biggest win, Chris Godwin coming back.
Yeah.
3 years, $66 million deals with $44 million guaranteed. Turning down more money to stay with the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
That is a huge win for them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think all Bucks fans were definitely pretty scared about what his future was held in Tampa.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm big into collecting sports cards now, and I was looking to invest in a Chris Godwin card because I thought he was going to be traded to a new team and be maybe a wide receiver 1. So I was looking to buy his card now when he's injured and nobody knows what's going to happen because his stock definitely dropped. And then thinking that he'd be a wide receiver 1, it would go up later in the year. But I'm thankfully I didn't because he re-signed. Obviously, he's going to be back to wide receiver 2, and we don't know, what's going to happen with him. But yeah, I mean, pretty relieved Bucks fans down there in Tampa that he's back for sure.
Absolutely. Levante David coming back for one more year. They re-signed a lot of guys: Sterling Shepard, Ben Bredesen, Anthony Nelson.
Yep.
And I think one position that I don't think a lot of people would pay attention to was the Buccaneers definitely needed a punter because they went through it last year. Yeah. And they got a pretty good. I think they got the best one in Riley Dixon coming over from Denver.
Yep.
So I definitely would say this is an A- B+ type of free agency for Tampa because you didn't need to change anything drastic. The only reason why I would give it a B+ is because they did not do too much in the secondary because that was something they need to address because Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield Jr. are like the only 2 good players on that unit because you saw the Washington game. They were getting picked apart.
Yep. Agreed.
So, all right, let's go to the final division, the NFC West. Let's go to the Cardinals, which they had a really quiet free agency. I mean, Jacoby Brissett going to be Kyler's backup, bringing back Baron Browning. Biggest moves were on defense. Josh Sweat I was honestly a little surprised at first that he went to Arizona just, because it's the Cardinals, but, he's familiar with Jonathan Gannon, and he could thrive in that system. So I like the move personally. And then Dalvin Tomlinson, he's one of the most consistent run stuffers in football, and a 2-year deal is perfect for him. So I'd say it's a pretty average free agency because, I don't know. I mean, listen, last year they were better, but that's not really saying much. They went 8-9. They're kind of in that state of mediocrity where it's like, they can win a lot of games, but they're not going to win the games that you need them to win the most. But what would you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think the Sweat and Tomlinson, I love those 2 signings. I think that's great for the defense. And if you're a Cardinals fan, you hope Kyler stays healthy, and you hope Marvin Williams turns out to be the receiver. Marvin Harrison, sorry.
Marvin Williams. Oh my God. Going to NBA. Dear God. Marvin Williams.
It's been a long, long day, but yeah, you hope Harrison turns out to be the receiver that he showed in a couple games last year. So I mean, if that offense can get to where it can, and the defense turns out to be what the players they've signed and can help them get to, it can definitely be a scary team in the NFC for sure.
Yeah. Did we give a grade on this?
I think you did. I would say a B is good. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. All right, down the list, who do we got? The Rams. So I think the biggest win was bringing back Matthew Stafford, agreeing to a restructured contract. I mean, there were rumors that he ran into Tom Brady and he was trying to recruit him to go to the Raiders. Thank God that was just, accidental and it wasn't like a planned meeting or anything. Even then, I'm glad that him and the Rams were able to work things out. Yeah. And I don't know what exactly the restructure is. It doesn't say here, but another big signing, Devontae Adams. Yeah. 2 years, $46 million, but unfortunately comes with the cost. You had to release Cooper Kupp. Yeah. But listen, I think we all knew that both sides were going to move apart eventually. I mean, you got the emergence of Puka Nacua as one factor. The second is that Cooper Kupp hasn't been healthy in the last couple of seasons. and it's kind of resulted in limited production as a result. But outside of that, I mean, Alaric Jackson, he was a guy that, was going to be one of the most sought out tackles in free agency. They were able to bring him back.
Yep.
So I think this was a pretty successful free agency. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it was tough to see Cooper Kupp go, but if you're a Rams fan, I think you welcome Devontae Adams with open arms, and I think you see Tutu Atwell have a little bit better of a year. I think people sleep on him a little bit because of the overshadowing with Puka and Cooper from last season, but he is a quick receiver that can get a lot of yards after the catch if he has any open field in front of him. So I think he is a great, wide receiver 3 to have, because with so much focus going on Puka and Devontae, he can slip under and be in the slot a lot, and he can get going quickly. So if you cannot keep your eyes off him. So I think that was a great re-signing, and overall, pretty good job by the Rams here.
Yeah, I'd give this an A-.
I was about to say A range.
You already won the division. You won a playoff game. You beat the freaking 14-win Minnesota Vikings. Really, the big thing that I think you need to address the most is just secondary play, number one.
Yep.
And number two, just making sure that your offensive line just continues to stay consistent, because I know you traded away Jones Jackson to the Bears, and you're kind of relying on younger guys to step into that mold. But I'd say it's a very successful free agency for them. All right, let's go down the list here. I think one of the biggest losers was the 49ers, because they had to let go of a lot of pieces. Yeah. Deebo Samuel, I mean, their young left tackle, their backup left tackle at Kansas City, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Travarius Ward, countless others. Yep. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to stop. I mean, Jordan Mason went to Minnesota. I mean, they actually released Kyle Juszczyk because apparently they didn't have the cap space, but they ended up bringing him back on a more team-friendly deal. So that was always great.
Yeah.
Mac Jones is back. Well, or I wouldn't say he's back, but he's in the place where, the 49ers were rumored to draft him in 2021, but ended up taking Trey Lance. He's Brock Purdy's backup. I think the only big signing was Demarcus Robinson. Yeah. And then even then, Richie Grant, who's a pretty solid safety.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's just 49ers, they're definitely one of the biggest losers. I'd probably say this is like a D.
Yep.
Because we know they're just trying to, save their money for Brock Purdy.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think the Juszczyk re-signing, he's a big fan favorite. So I think that was a good re-signing in terms of that. Mac Jones, whatever. You have Brock Purdy, you're just banking on him. But yeah, I mean, Demarcus Robinson to kind of replace Deebo, I thought that was kind of interesting, but not really who I thought they would pick up. I thought they'd get somebody a little bit better.
And they also let Leonard Floyd and Javon Hargrave go. Those are two other guys.
Exactly. So losing a ton of guys on your team that made big impacts on the season last year, that hurts you a little bit. And then another interesting thing, giving Luke Farrell a deal upwards of $20 million. I thought that was
that was just not good.
I don't know what.
He's okay. He's a good blocker. Maybe that's why they brought him in. But
he's no George Kittle or anything like that. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's a lot of money into one player. But yeah, I think a D is more than fair for the Niners.
We haven't given anybody an F. So
no, that's good.
I don't think anybody on this list deserves an F. I'm not sure. I don't know. We'll see what Seattle has in store for us.
Let's see.
So they traded away Geno Smith, which is fine because listen, he's in his mid-30s. He's entering the final year of his extension, and you're not going to be the team that's going to give him a new contract because he'll be in his near 40s or close to his 40s. But the Sam Darnold, I feel like they're just the same tier of quarterback. Two guys that were able to get their careers back on track and have, magical seasons, but never really lifting them into that next tier. So I feel like now that Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are gone, I mean, I just hope that, listen, Cooper Kupp is great. I mean, a good name to have, not the same player that he was, in 2021 when he had the best season of his life. But, he's a guy that when you pair him with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and who knows, maybe Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that, it could work out, possibly. But it's just, you're not going to get, 35 touchdowns or 45 or 4,300 passing yards, whatever the number was, in Minnesota, because you had Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and an aggressive defense and one of the best head coaches in football, Kevin O'Connell. And I'm not saying that Seattle doesn't have that, because their defense was well improved. Mike McDonald was a huge reason for that. But offensively, they're challenged. And I don't know if Sam Darnold is like a huge upgrade as to what they're going for. Still, he's a good quarterback, but he's not great. But defensively, re-signing Ernest Jones, and then the DeMarcus Lawrence and Jaron Reed deals, I'm not sure, because both of them are kind of in the twilights of their careers.
Yeah.
And DeMarcus Lawrence only played 4 games, so I'd say it was a good one. I wouldn't say it's great for their free agency overall. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think going back to what you said, DeMarcus Lawrence and Reed, they're both good players. We know that they're good. We know they can play. But again, like you said, they're getting old, right? $42 million for a guy who only played a few games last year. That's a gamble if I've ever seen one. But
absolutely.
I don't really know what other options they have. But on a positive end, I think Sam Darnold will thrive in Seattle because Cooper Kupp and JSN, I think it's kind of similar to how the Vikings offense was with Addison and Jefferson. They're not really skill level similar, but
yeah, well,
in the way they kind of play, they're similar. So I think he should thrive in that offense.
Well, this is my hot take. I don't think Cooper Kupp is going to be the number one option. It's going to be Smith and Jigba, because he had a quiet breakout season last year. And I think if he continues to climb that mountain, he is going to be a freaking stud. He's already better than Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
I hate to say it. And listen, you might say, Garrett Wilson hasn't had a good quarterback. Well, you know what? Garrett Wilson hasn't really done himself any favors, because you see the flashes, but you don't see anything consistent. So for a letter grade, I give this like a B.
Yeah, I was going to say B-, so that's good.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. Thank you all so much for watching. So sorry that we kind of dragged this out a little longer than we should have, but we hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time whenever the draft rolls around. Maybe we'll do a mock draft. It might not be next week, but eventually. So we'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye.